This week, Joshua Hay and Todd Peterson from Junto are with us to discuss addressing OT struggles. Then, in this week's topic segment, we discuss spotting red flags in online posts and claims. And finally, in the enterprise security news, some interesting fundings, some more interesting acquisitions, including a late breaking one that I just added literally 60 seconds ago. And a new AI related term has been coined, cyberslop. The latest insights from cyber insurance claims. The AI security market isn't nearly as big as it might seem, and we'll talk a little bit about the AI bubble. Cyber criminals are targeting trucking and logistics to steal goods, physical goods. And sorry, dads, science says your kids get the smarts from mom. All that and more in this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Identity and access management is hard. Whether it's administering identities, managing and controlling access, building, implementing, and enforcing policies, or governing the whole thing. IAM is often the realm of inefficient processes, bloated implementation timelines, and expensive and complex projects that struggle to solve problems. Thanks to Junto, those challenges can be a thing of the past. Junto delivers a full-stack IAM platform with a microservices architecture that delivers all of the functionality your unique environment demands, and an implementation model built for rapid and relevant time to value without requiring specialized staff and skills. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Junto. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Men Make Dinner Day. It only comes once a year, so enjoy it. Does mac and cheese from a box count as cooking? If you chop some green onions and sprinkle them on top, I think it does. You just have to get creative with it. And this is episode 432, recorded on Thursday, November 6, 2025. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Dean of Data Science, the Knight of Neurodiversity, the Watcher of Data Center Waste, Jackie McGuire. How you doing, Jackie?
I am doing well. I'm highly caffeinated. And I've been soccer momming for the last couple weeks. I've been basketball momming. Sports seasons all kind of collided at one time. So it's been a busy couple weeks, but I guess that's something to be grateful for, right? My kids are all doing well in their sports.
Nice. And if you want a moment to text your partner, let him know that he's going to be making dinner tonight. I'll give you a moment.
Yeah. He cooks a lot. I will say that he probably cooks more than I do. And I think growing up, my dad was definitely the better cook. I mostly cooked for myself because I'm your stereotypical 80s latchkey kid. But
Right.
when I wasn't having Pop-Tarts for dinner and my dad was working like second, third shift and actually was home to cook, he threw down. My mom was unfortunately not a very good cook.
Yeah, I love to cook, but my partner's like a really, really good cook. So I don't complain if she wants to make food. But if asked, I will cook also.
But yeah,
I specialize in breakfast.
I will happily boycott making dinner tonight.
Nice. All right, jumping into the interview here. We don't have any announcements today. This interview is sponsored by Junto, and today's topic is OT security. And we've got two guests with us today. Joshua Hay, Senior Solutions Architect at Junto. How are you doing, Josh?
Hey, what's up, Adrian? I'm doing good. Nice to be a part of the show.
Yeah, lovely to have you here. And Todd Peterson, Director of Product Marketing at Junto. How are you doing, Todd?
I'm doing well as well, and also excited to be part of the show.
Nice. Great to have you both here. Very excited for the conversation.
Me too.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I helped my husband start a mechanical contractor. We did a ton of like ICS and things like that. I actually went and got certified in a few languages of automation to help him out. So this is one of the areas that I kind of geek out on. So yes, I'm really excited.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's identity and OT are two areas that often seem to have some kind of disconnect with the security team proper, which I find interesting because, like OT, I get it. Like the facilities folks, OT is often administered and run by people who aren't even tech people, right? They're facilities people in a lot of cases, or they, like they specialize in the thing that the OT systems are running, right? They don't specialize in technology necessarily. I guess once you get to a certain size, you might have technology specialists in there, but we're also talking about identity because Junto is focused on identity too. And I remember last year's Identiverse, the big thing was identity security, as if the terms identity and security were, like nobody thought to put them together until 2024.
Yeah.
So I found that really interesting. I was like, yeah, I always thought of identity as a big part of security, but okay. Apparently, in some organizations, there are identity teams that don't talk to the security teams very much. So, Josh, coming to you, just from a organizational and social lens, like, are you still seeing significant separation? Like these teams aren't talking to each other, or is that mostly solved where you see where these teams do regularly work with each other?
I mean, it's definitely still a push, right? Like when you're talking about the convergence to IT and OT, again, it's a lot of different systems, and the biggest concern in the OT space is really just like, not only the knowledge of these systems and these different networks, but it really comes down to trust. Like, do you trust
Mhm.
these IT engineers to come in, properly learn the environment, and help set up controls around that? Because, priorities for a lot of these plants and industrial sites are going to be business continuity, no matter what, right? And they only have certain
Yeah.
periods of the years where they can shut down. So when you're talking about change, even, it's like you got to do it during certain periods of time.
Right, right. You got your code freezes and all that, and code release periods. 3 a.m. on I remember early mornings on Sundays coming in to do stuff because that's when most employees were not using those systems.
Nope. I think that you
And
also run into, like a when you are on the OT side and you're buying equipment, usually when you estimate the life of that equipment, it's not based on how long the firmware and software that powers it is going to be useful or supported, and so I also have found that, there's not sometimes talent crossover between those 2 teams because the people who actually use the automation systems retain it while IT ends up having much more important things to work on sometimes, and until there's an issue, I don't know, maybe this has been solved post Target breach because people realized it was a problem, but it was just kind of like, yeah, this system's 15 years old and we don't have budget to swap it out for like another 5 because that's how long we plan to have it.
Yeah, I mean, that's also true. And the capacity and planning in these OT plants are a lot different from like IT, right? Operational things, vendor requirements are like the biggest. They're going to want vendor support for a lot of the products they intake. So that's another thing you have to consider.
yeah, and another thing here, that I kind of want to call out, to Jackie's point, the perception of OT is kind of all over the place because those systems don't get updated much. The assumption is that they don't care about security, or that they're lazy, or that security just doesn't happen in OT. I mean, you do run into things where maybe you're not allowed to scan that environment because things are fragile and they fall over. Even with a simple port scan, I've seen where you have to reboot some systems because sending certain types of data to certain ports that accept any data from anything will do weird things when you probe them. But there's so many factors in here that aren't considered. Like you can't just update from XP to Windows 7. Like you need in a lot of cases you need the vendor to certify their hardware connected to that operating system, right? Connected to that software. And the same thing from like Windows 7 to Win 10. I heard somebody say maybe 2 months ago that one of their OT systems just got certified for Win 10. So basically they had this window of like 3 months before Win 10 was end of life, that they were finally like legit on a supported Windows operating system, and then they're out of support again.
That's just in time delivery, Adrian. Google it.
Yeah.
No, and to your point, I mean, it's correct, right? Like there are certain fragile components within OT environments. You're talking these human machine interfaces, programmable logic controllers, all that stuff. Like, yeah, if you throw like a 3 megabyte ping into a lot of these systems, you could crash something. Like I remember attending the ICS security conference and we were doing a pen test exercise and like, I sent too much data at this mock nuclear facility and caused a meltdown. Like, things can happen, which again has that paranoia for a lot of site engineers because it's like, all right, if these IT guys come in here and need to upgrade things, like they need to be informed. So the biggest thing is really just good communication, understanding of, the environment that you're going into.
That conference, is that the one in Florida? It's called like S3 or S4 or something like that.
I think that's a different one, but I think it's like,
okay.
Yeah, I think it takes place in Atlanta.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting too. I had this conversation at DEF CON this year with someone about data centers and utilities and other places like that. And I was like, I think on a small scale, you could hack someone's cloud, you could go after someone's data, but on a much larger scale, you play with a couple sensor readings, you deploy the fire suppressant in a data center when it doesn't need to be deployed, you change the barometric set, like ranges that are acceptable for different places, and you can just blow the whole place up. So why target the data when you can target the whole thing? And it's interesting because they came from like, a software security background, and they were kind of just like, and like,
yeah,
so few
that
people
dry
think
stuff
about it.
where you can suck all the oxygen out of the room. That's dangerous. You don't want to be in there when the FM 200, I think it's called, that kind of stuff goes off.
Yeah,
that's no bueno.
And that's the thing too, is like IT can definitely have a direct impact to someone's life, right? Like maybe even indirect, right? Like iCloud gets hacked, photos get leaked, someone, does something, things can happen. In OT, it's very much like direct life endangerment if something happens. Like again, fire suppressant systems going off, a control arm gets overloaded, smacks someone in the face. Like there's just all kinds of things that can go wrong, which is why it's very sensitive.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the things I want to talk about here is, especially for folks who are listening who are not in OT, who are outside of OT. I think this is kind of the heart of the conversation I want to get into here is kind of enabling communication between the two. I think one of the things that makes that difficult is just a lack of understanding of what those constraints are. Like we see this a lot with security, where security says, this thing showed up on a vulnerability scan and I need you to fix it. Like this patch came out 2 years ago, just apply the thing, just install the thing. Like, why haven't you done it yet? And the person on the other side is like, where do I even start? Like you have no idea how any of this works. We can't just patch, right? So some of these systems. So coming to you, Todd, you haven't had a chance to talk much yet. Identity, I think, is one of the interesting things here. And I think one of the reasons we see so many different identity vendors is that there's so many different requirements for identity in different systems. Like there's a lot of great identity solutions out there. If you're cloud first, if you're SaaS first, if you don't have your own data center, if you don't have stuff that's air gapped, if it's just laptops and servers in the cloud, there's an easy button for that. But there's a lot of people that don't have a simplistic setup like that, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, if you think about, in the OT world, when it's air gapped, you probably don't want it embraced by your enterprise IAM, platform or whatever. It's air gapped for a reason, but there's a ton of OT that's not air gapped. And if you're able to treat it as a full citizen in the identity management, paradigm, then you're able to raise the bar on security. Some of the real common problems across OT are obviously hard-coded passwords that haven't been changed in 50 years. And, that's the same password that everybody else who ever bought that sensor or whatever is using. So, if someone's able to get in, they can use that password to do all kinds of terrible stuff. But you can't impose a password management solution or even a PAM solution on an air-gapped OT, or you don't want to. But if it's able to be a full citizen, then you can totally do that. And then you're kind of at the mercy of the technology. If it's Windows 10, probably your modern IAM solution isn't equipped, or at least hasn't cared about Windows 10 for years. And so, it's probably not going to serve it as well. So my take on it is every OT system has people that need to interact with it, the ones who use that hard-coded password. If you're able to impose those strict controls and that very granular policy of who can do what and when and how and why and all those types of things, then many of those problems go away, because you know exactly who can do what. If somebody comes in and is impersonating that person, you're able to detect it. The person is no longer with the company. They don't have that password and they're out in the wild and can sell it or whatever. You've got very strong provisioning, deprovisioning, access control policy. If you're able to do that on the people, then that just dramatically raises the bar on security that's outside of IT's realm. These people have IT has influence over their identity, for their productivity applications, their email, their regular work life, but not for where they touch OT. So you want to treat their interactions with OT just like you would anything else, meaning a unified policy set, very granular, policy-based access control, all of the things that you would do for, somebody accessing a sensitive financial system, or, the
Right.
ERP or whatever. It's just the same strategy. It's just on a different target that's maybe a little bit harder to connect to or impossible to connect to. And also that's, the IT team doesn't necessarily really want to deal with it because it's old technology. It's boring. They don't know enough about it. They're, not super confident. So you have to kind of build this trust of the OT folks, the operational folks are, oh, this IT team, they're looking out for my best interests. And the IT team, we're looking out for the company's best interest by embracing this kind of island that existed previously.
When people do that
And to
successfully, does that look like does it start with a policy that is created jointly between the 2 teams? Or how do you see people most successfully navigate that to kind of build that bridge between the 2?
Well, and I think so. The policies really on the OT side, it's really simple. Yes or no. Can you do something or can you not do something?
I guess
You
I
know,
mean policy in a broader company sense more than a control at software level sense.
yeah, I think that if the IT team is able to say, we need granular policy, you need to make sure that you have the right access to the right stuff at the right time. You can control that you can prove it, that you can impose multi-factor authentication or whatever else onto this person's access to the system, then you're able to do it. And so, it's very easy to do broad, lame policy, just to say, okay, yeah, everybody can access this because most of them need it. And, but that's where the danger comes in. So you want to have the ability to very granularly define this policy. And then that's kind of not even IT or OT's job. That's kind of the security team, the audit team's job to say, here's what it should look like. And then just the challenge is finding the right tools that's going to allow you to do this really hard thing. Because, it can be done, but, it's pretty hard. So you need to find the right mix of tools to make it happen.
Yeah, and to Josh's point earlier, I think this applies to IT to an extent as well. But the priorities around keeping stuff up and running, right? Particularly with OT stuff, especially if it's operational dependent. If this is keeping revenue going, stuff like that. Just earlier I was talking about quantum computers and how for them to work. Not earlier on this show. Sorry, I was doing a thing earlier, and I had uh, a whole bit a class I was doing on post quantum crypto. And quantum computers, because they have to be like the computer portion of it has to be cooled to like 10 millikelvin, which is like 200 times cooler than the vacuum of space. If there's any interruption to power to those things, it could take weeks to restore that super, super cold temperature. Like it takes a long time for them to get down to that super cooled temperature. So availability is super important here. Business continuity is super important, but it seems like a contradiction because at the same time, everybody says it's super fragile. You can't scan it, you can't touch it, don't sneeze near it, right? Like, doesn't that seem kind of like a contradiction? Like in a time where we need things to be really resilient, we need 100% uptime on these things. But also, if you look at it funny, it falls over.
I think that it's a little bit of you don't want anyone to touch it until somebody you don't want to touch it has touched it. And then you want, it's all hands on deck to make it happen.
The attackers, they're not going to follow those rules. They'll scan the hell out of it, right?
Right. And so I think that's the real conversation that has to take place. How long are you willing to leave that risk window open? Or do you bite the bullet and you schedule when we're going to, do whatever downtime we need to do it, or, but I think that, we won't do it until we have to do it. When you have to do it, it's too late.
Yeah. And coming to you, Josh, I wonder like how much control the customer has here versus the vendors on how fragile these things are. Is this are the systems really that fragile, or is that fear of touching anything and breaking things really justified, or is that more just because that's the way we've always done it? Like we told you, it's up and running. Nobody touch it. Don't patch it. Don't touch the software. Don't change anything, or like how justified is that?
I mean, it's definitely justified, just because a lot of those rules, a lot of those things have happened from experience, right? Like someone broke something because they did something. So, and it's interrupted the business. So,
and they know the name of the person. They'll tell you who did it. Yeah. And it was on a Friday and it was at 5 p.m.
You gotta fill out
our entire weekend was gone.
You got to fill out a whole form. You got to do a whole root cause analysis. You got to actually name who was responsible. You got to create a new policy. Like it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And now it's the Frank policy because Frank just had to, he had to push that button.
And I equate a lot of those rules similar to like cave diving, right? Like the reason they make you bring 3 lights is because the person that came in with 1, the light died. The person that came in 2, the light died. He went to go grab the second one and it fell. He couldn't find it. So like there's certain rules in place for a lot of this stuff. And I mean, your question, right, was like, do vendors have more control? In the scene today, yes, vendors hold far more control than customers would ever tolerate in the OT world, right? Because like vendors will oftentimes dictate the OS of a system and the patch levels. Like again, you cannot upgrade from XP to 7 unless they certify that. Right, because you risk breaking things, and if you break it, you got to wait for the vendor to come in, do the fixes, operational downtime, not good. You're talking configuration changes. A lot of the times, the vendor engineers have to come in and do those things, right? You have to work conjoined, and then there's certain boundaries, right? So, like, there's proprietary protocols or certain types of closed ecosystems that prevent you from plugging in to sometimes, a lot of these external IAM systems and monitoring solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Maybe it's not even connected to that network, so it can't sync, right?
Yeah.
Well, and again, some OT stuff, they don't have reliable internet. Like even if they're not air gapped, it might be like satellite internet that they get like 2 hours a day.
Because it's physically in a remote area or something.
Yeah, like an oil rig 800 miles in the middle of the ocean is not going to get reliable connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think oil rigs are definitely a challenge. I mean, even sites on land are a challenge, right? Like some sites have to communicate with each other. So they got to have cable run underground. And then you're thinking about upgrading the infrastructure of OT. Like a lot of people nowadays are going to next generation firewalls. Maybe they're using, something in conjunction like with Zscaler, for example. And it's hard to achieve that. You got to plan for the high availability. You got to plan your fiber optics, the length of the cables, types of cables, connections. You're drafting high level HLDs. You're drafting up bombs. So it's very, very much, logistics are heavily involved.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I worked with briefly with we were selling something to him. I was working for a vendor at the time, a telecom in Alaska, and some of their locations, you don't roll a truck, you roll a helicopter, right? And only 6 months of the year is it safe to send a helicopter out there. So for 6 months of the year, uh, stuff better stay up and running because nobody's able to physically, or at least safely physically, go to where that equipment is running.
Well, there's also, I think, like with OT, a lot of it is it's so connect. All of the processes are so connected that I think it is a lot of times like a chain of failures. If you break one thing, it's not just having someone come in and break that one thing. Like they all run on electricity. They're all extremely sensitive to voltage variations and things like that. And at least from my experience, there's, like you said, there's policies for a reason. And it's because while sometimes it's a small failure that's contained, there are also these kind of catastrophic things where like the main power goes out, the generator fails to start, this thing overheats because of that. It just, and yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just uh, catastrophizing it, but I've seen enough things where a small, like, oh, we're just going to do this thing turns into 6 months of cleanup and finger pointing.
And you're spot on. I mean, everything has interdependence. Well, maybe not everything, but a lot of it, right? Like, for example, if we have a PLC controlling a pump, it's going to depend on feedback from sensors, right? There's also the lack of segmentation on these things. There's shared credentials. So there's plenty of ways for systems to fault on each other.
And how do you deal with the fact that, I mean, because there are a lot of different systems, some of them are legacy, and a lot of them require really, really deep levels of access, right? Like root access at sometimes. Like, how do you deal with implementing policies with older systems that maybe don't necessarily have the levels of layer segmentation that you would
Mhm.
typically expect? Do you handle that on a temporary access basis? Like, is it just another one of the fine grained identity controls?
Well, I think that, since you can't, if they need root access, there's no granularity there. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And so, the granularity comes in how that policy is influencing the person that has root access. So you could set it up as, only one person in the company has that access at any one time. When
Mhm.
when they don't need that access, it's not provisioned. You could do temporal access where
Yeah.
it's kind of on demand, that it's provisioned and deprovisioned as it's needed. And then just a very strict policy of who should have it, how they get it, and then how they actually log on once they have that access. So, do you have to implement some multi-factor authentication? Is it issued and they use the root password, but then once they're done, that password is immediately changed so they don't know it anymore. And the next person
Mhm.
that needs it, it's issued to them, for on a temporal basis for a specific set of time. So kind of classic PAM um, implementations, but you probably don't have the opportunity to do like a password vault,
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
especially in like a remote location. So you have to do it
Right.
kind of in the traditional identity management. How is that access management happening? When and how do you grant them the rights? What happens to those rights after they're done with them? And that's all based in that granular policy, but the access itself isn't granular at all. But you can be very detailed and very diligent on, who does what, when, why, who gives approval to make it happen. And then that also gives you an audit trail,
Yeah, I
if
was
you
gonna
need to.
say, so you at least have some record of who might have been the person who did
Yeah.
this thing, because usually you
Yeah.
come in, they're like, "I don't know, it's admin," like somebody who knew that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that also then, insulates you quite heavily from, bad actors getting in.
Mhm.
Because,
Yeah.
if a bad actor is able to get in far enough to be approved with the policy to issue to get that password and go and do bad stuff, your policy sucks.
Your
You
head
know,
of facilities is a bad actor.
Yeah. Well, like Todd, you were saying earlier, you have employees come and go, right?
Yeah.
Like we saw an incident with Disney earlier this year where, you have these situations where an angry employee wants to do some damage. And everybody knows the FTP server passwords because they never change. They've been the same for 12 years. And I imagine you see a lot of that in OT. In fact, to use a more recent example, I was looking at some information came out about the Louvre heist, the famous museum in France, and the password to the video surveillance system was Louvre, right? And then they had another system with software they bought from Thales in 2003, and Thales like notified them. They're like, "Hey, we're not supporting this anymore." Like back in I forget when it was, 2014, something like that. Like this is end of life. You need to replace it with something else. And that system, the password was Thales, was the name of the vendor, right? So
Yeah. Well, and what happens, I think, is that, say, like when we would do HVAC, you're not supposed to know the password. So you install a new control system, you set a very generic password, you hand it to them on a post-it note and say, hey, you need to go in and change this. And then they stick that post-it note on the monitor and
And it
nobody
never
ever
changes.
goes in and changes it.
yeah. Well, then you
Like
wait
people
20
used to call
years
my
until
husband to
something.
come fix their air conditioning controls because he had worked on them like 10 years ago and the password had never been changed. So it's crazy.
And then you wait 20 years until a heist happens, like at the Louvre, and
yeah,
then you figure out, oh, when we kind of were screwing up for a long time.
Yeah.
yeah, amazing stuff. It's a different world for sure. I'm glad we got to cover a lot of things here, Josh and Todd. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And make sure you go visit securityweekly.com/Junto to learn more about them and their solutions, particularly in challenging environments. And stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to discuss spotting red flags in online posts for this week's topic segment. Imprivata delivers simple and secure access management solutions for healthcare and other mission-critical industries to ensure every second of crucial work is both frictionless and secure. Imprivata Enterprise Access Management delivers simple and secure access to any app from any device with single sign-on, multi-factor, and passwordless authentication. The solution streamlines workflows, reduces password fatigue, and ensures seamless access for every identity. Learn more about how Imprivata is redefining secure access at securityweekly.com/Imprivata. Cyber threats follow a familiar path, an attack chain reused across the globe. Fortra knows how the enemy operates, so you can stay one step ahead. Our advanced security solutions detect, disrupt, and defeat threats at every stage, protecting your data, business, and customers. With Fortra at your side, the battle ends before it begins. Visit securityweekly.com/Fortra to see how you can get total attack chain coverage. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. For this week's topic segment, I decided to share an example of something I ran across a few days ago. There's a process I often get asked to friends, family, even people in the industry, like, what do you think about this? Is this legit or is this BS, right? And, I never really thought of myself as having a particularly good BS filter until I started doing more of this and people said, oh, wow, that's really valuable. You should share more of this. And the latest one, my partner actually sent me this because I just finished a book called Midnight in Chernobyl. And this was a post about how the nature is coming back in Chernobyl and all that. And, basically the TLDR of it is the absence of humans has been great for nature, countered by the radiation there, right? Like in terms of bad for the environment, people more bad than radiation is kind of the gist of this message. So great message. Like I was thinking, like, I'm putting together a talk on resilience and this kind of like resilience of nature and the way nature is adapting to all the extra radiation. Like that might be a really great metaphor for the work that we need to do in security and IT to make things more resilient. But the more I looked at this post, the more it kind of started setting off some red flags. And I'm actually not finished going through and validating everything in it, but I thought it might be helpful to just share my thought process as I go through it. So, Jackie, you've had a chance to at least read a little bit of it. I would love to hear because I'm, from reading some of your posts online, I'm sure you have a mental process you go through when you're analyzing something online, trying to determine whether it's a post on LinkedIn, like our example today, or maybe it's a company. Somebody says, I went to this company's website. I can't tell if they're legit or not, what they do. Like I'd love to hear like what your thought process is when you're presented with something like this and somebody says, Jackie, BS or no?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot. Like, so in college, I took a handful of different, like communications classes and things like that, and had a whole segment in one of them on propaganda and on kind of motivational writing and media and how to manipulate people through writing. And then I actually think I also learned a lot as an analyst. And,
Mhm.
we would do these research projects where we would have to conduct research, and you learn a lot about how you frame questions and how you ask questions and how the way you ask questions influences people's answers to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Um,
If you put together a survey, for sure, you need to be aware of that.
Yeah, yeah, and so, I think the first thing I look for is I just, I look for facts that I can start researching, like the whole like
Yeah.
trying to root yourself in the okay, are the basic claims here true and who is this person? And it's always like I think it's first source. So at first I try to figure out who the person is who's posting it just so I understand what their motivation might be. And then I go to the content of it because usually that the two of those together will tell you a lot about whether something's BS or not. But yeah, I think I go the same place that you're about to go with your analysis because you shared it with me,
Mhm.
and basically the exact same thing of like, okay, let's go verifiable fact by verifiable fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, but before I get to the facts, and actually, there's a something I learned about a couple years ago that Michael Crichton, the author, that came up with, like the Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton, that he called the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, and what this was, I think I'm saying the guy's name right. Gell-Mann was a physicist, and it's this effect of okay, you're an expert in a field, and you're reading a newspaper, and they're just completely wrong about everything that they say on that topic in which you are an expert. So all of a sudden, you've got this way you can kind of judge the quality of the fact checking and what's in that particular. It doesn't have to be a newspaper; it could be any media company, could be a TV channel or something like that. Why would you then trust anything else that they tell you, right? If they're doing such a bad job where you're an expert and you can validate, yeah, they don't understand this at all. They've got it all wrong. But then you suddenly like treat the rest of the newspaper as if it's factual and trustworthy and stuff like that. So that's the amnesia bit of the Jailman amnesia effect. And I'm not sure of the events that led to him coining that phrase, but um, Crichton was a very opinionated man.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
um,
I think
so
one of the things that I think I always look for in my first kind of BS detection is some version of a straw man or generalized
mhm,
population thought argument or agreement. Like, people say, some people are saying, like, and but no specific as to who. No, like
mhm.
residents of Fourth Avenue in Tucson are saying. It's just this kind of generalized, like, that's the
Right.
first one is like there's
People,
more. Yeah,
people say,
yeah, the
what people?
people. And then I think the other one
Experts
is
say, what experts? Name
yeah,
them.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then the other one that I always look for is like there's more storytelling than there is reporting. And so attribution, like generally if something's not BS, there won't be subtle attribution of motivation, or it's not going to be trying to evoke some type of there's more like an emotional response, I think. And good reporting does evoke emotional responses, but it's
Yeah.
because of the facts, not because
But
of
you
the way
mix
the
the two,
narrative is
right?
written. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a real skill to mixing storytelling and making sure it's you state your sources, there's facts. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So the first thing that set off the red flags for me was the style in which it was written. There's a lot of hyperbole in this, and I think it wasn't until I got to the very end of it, and there's a phrase: "The conclusion is staggering. Nature's not just recovering; it's changing the rules of the game." And that's not how science works. Like, nature doesn't change science. Science reflects what it observes and attempts to understand, right? Like you not even writing about science correctly, like as if you don't understand science at all. And so that's what set it off for me at first is just all the exaggeration here. In what's another statement? Radiation turned out to be kinder than humans was supposedly a quote from a biologist at a conference in Prague. We didn't name the biologist. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
A link to their LinkedIn, like everybody else does when they put a LinkedIn post out. We didn't link to the conference or name the conference in Prague. We don't even know what year this happened, right? There's no date. So just the lack of details there. And
Well, this is
very
also super clearly written by AI, which is fine.
is
But
it? Okay.
so the conclusion is staggering,
Yeah.
for some reason, AI
Yeah.
loves that structure. It
Mhm.
loves that structure. It loves to open things with
Yeah.
that. It loves to close
The
things with
most
that.
astonishing thing
Yeah.
is another phrase. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be honest, or let's
But
be straight, or like colon is one of the ways it loves starting things, and then it
Mhm.
finishes them like this. And I think that, there are also a lot of telltale signs of AI generation in here, which is, look, I write a lot and I use AI to revise and edit and research, and it's what you do with it, right? But that's also one of the big things that I'm like, okay, this is very clearly AI generated and then not edited.
yeah. And so one of the other things, like very quickly when I'm reading something like this, and there's all this vagueness, like it becomes very clear that the person that posted this on LinkedIn was not the author. Because it lacked that connection to them. There was no connection to them and what they did. Like
Mhm.
clicking on their LinkedIn profile, they don't have anything to do with science, right? There's no science connection here. So why are they even posting this?
Yeah.
And so what I'll do very quickly is I'll take a phrase that seems very unique out of this. Like a biologist from Chernobyl, like that's not a long list, said at a conference in Prague. Like that's pretty unique. I don't think we're going to find too many cases where that same phrase exists throughout the internet. So I'll take that phrase, put quotes around it, do a web search for it, and see if it comes up in other places. If I suddenly get 200 posts on Facebook with the same exact text, like the
Yeah.
paragraphs are identical almost, or I find it, and so I immediately found it on Twitter. Completely different person on Twitter posting this. The formatting was a little different. It was numbered. Each paragraph was numbered. So for the LinkedIn post, the numbers were removed. But everything else, every other word is exactly the same. So that's a big red flag to me. And the frustrating thing here is that some of these facts, like some of the stuff going on in Chernobyl, like I said, I haven't finished fact checking everything, but some of it's probably true, right? Like there's some very hard work that scientists did, and somebody decided to make a story out of it and pretend it was real. So that kind of hurts the science because it encapsulates it in something that's AI written, that's sloppy, that's hyperbolic, and it really just kind of it's kind of disrespectful to the hard science being done by people.
Yeah, it's also really concerning from just a general societal intellectual standpoint. I think 404 Media did some really good reporting on this a few months ago about how AI
Mhm.
slop is just dominating the internet.
Yeah.
And the problem is that if there are, one legitimate fact-based historic article or record of something, and then to your point, like they're using these content factories to produce, thousands and thousands of other versions. Now, yes, you can do this whole crawling through and looking for sources and things like that. But if you really think we're going to get to a world where AI is kind of this interface between us and the internet, that's a problematic, because it's going to have to be able to decipher between all of those AI created versions of
Yeah.
crap and the truth.
Yeah.
And
The internet can't be the source of the truth because there's so much crap on it.
yeah, yeah. And so
And,
like
and,
I
and that's only
also
increasing, to your point.
Mhm. Yeah, and hosting all of that stuff, not to be, I know you introduced me as this, the watcher of data center waste, but you have to wonder how much compute. This is one example of billions that exist out there. Like, what is that costing us in power and water and all, every day to host all this stuff? I mean, there's probably going to get to it in news, but there's this new article out about Meta and how like
Mhm.
up to 10% of their revenue is coming from scammers, and they know it.
Mhm.
And so it's like, what is that costing us to
Mhm.
enable this kind of crap? It really is a question that we need to ask, because we all pay that price in utility rates, in water quality, and just general like quality of life. People falling victim to crap, and so yeah, I don't know. And I also wonder to what extent people care if this is true or not.
Right.
Do
Yeah.
people really give a shit?
And a lot of people don't, right?
Yeah.
Even the stat you just threw out, like, how do we know that 10% is coming from scammers, and how do we know that that's like how is that stat generated? How do we know that they know about it? And we can go back and we can find all that out, but most people aren't going to go the trouble of doing that.
Yeah.
You and me, like, generally, if I trust a source, if it comes from 404 Media, like, I would rather trust a source than have to fact check everything in my life, right? That I come across. Particularly doing a weekly podcast, like, I would never get this thing prepped and done if I fact check everything that we looked at. So I tend to gravitate towards, so back to the Gentleman amnesia effect. If I check one fact, if one story is sketchy, right? I tend to not use that source anymore. There's a reason you'll never see a Forbes link. I think in any of our stuff, Forbes has like burned that bridge with me
Yeah.
because for payment op-eds, like they'll publish anything from
Yeah.
anybody as long as they're willing to pay.
Yeah, there's
And
a handful of different outlets that I have just unsubscribed from, because I'm like,
mhm,
yeah, and they're ones that used to be reputable. They were like, hey,
yeah,
this is one of the top places, and now all of a sudden they get bought by one of these massive conglomerates, and they basically turn into a glorified ad network.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Forbes hits me up once a month, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to be an author? Do you want to be published by Forbes?" I'm like, "Absolutely not.
No,
I
I
don't
do
want to
not.
attach my personal brand to you, given the slop that you put out there." So,
Yeah.
no.
I think
So
I
yeah,
told you about a couple weeks ago, this person from a paid content factory accidentally CC'd like hundreds of people on this email with a whole list of different websites that look like legit news sites, but it was
mhm,
basically the website and how much it
yeah,
was to get a story published on that website. And it was only a
yeah.
couple $100.
Yeah, there are fake media and news sites out there that are run by some of these content factories, just to make you sound like an expert. You can pay
Hmm.
them $2,000. They'll publish something in a magazine, and then they will publish. They'll have AI generate blog posts and put them on all these different sites. So all of a sudden, you have this amazing looking SEO. Somebody does a search on your name, and all these sources come up, but it was all from that one $2,000 use of your credit card to have a content factory just you know uh, fill the
I'd
internet
probably
with all
have
that
more
trash.
followers if I had less scruples, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely you could. That is demonstrably true. So I think I want to wrap with your suggestion, Jackie. Like this, the reason I'm not done with this is because I'm stubborn and a completionist, and I want to go through every fact, but I don't think you have to. And I like your suggestion of just choose one thing that's easy to factually look up. And if that thing is BS, again, to that Joe Man amnesia effect, you don't have to fact check the rest of it. You find a little BS, you find a little rot, you know, then you find a little rust, tear it all out. It's all bad. Move on.
Yep.
Don't retweet it. Don't reshare it on LinkedIn. Don't be part of the problem.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's just kind of the gist of it is if it feels like something's giving you facts but trying to make you feel some way about them, they're
Yeah.
probably not facts, they're opinions.
Yeah. And it's really tough when it flatters, like you're already, when it seems to support something you're passionate about, that's when it's toughest to do that work. And that's how they get you. All right, that's all the time we have for this week's topic segment. Stick around. We'll be back in a few moments with the weekly enterprise news. AI has officially moved past the hype. The question isn't should we use AI anymore, it's how do we use it in a way that truly helps. Meet Delinea Iris AI, practical AI to secure the modern enterprise, designed to work quietly in the background, making faster, smarter access decisions, reducing risk, and giving your team time back. This isn't AI for show. It's purpose-built for identity security, boosting productivity without adding friction. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Delinea. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter. METER. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW432 if you want to follow along as we go through the news or for links to the articles that we're covering. All right, and a lot of interesting stuff this week. Since we were talking about it before we hit record, Jackie, why don't we just start with that, right?
Yeah.
So the headline here, I'll read the headline and I will just I will hand off to you here. Meta is earning a fortune on a deluge of fraudulent ads, documents show. Meta projected 10% of its 2024 revenue would come from ads for scams and banned goods, documents seen by Reuters show. 15 billion scam ads a day.
Yep.
I mean, we know it happens, but at that scale, 10% of the revenue?
Yeah, and I haven't had a Facebook account or Meta. I still call it Facebook because I'm old, but I haven't had an account on Facebook in years, and it seems like it's significantly more prevalent there. Like on Instagram, you get marketed stupid, cheap crap, right? You get marketed stuff that might be lower quality or,
Instagram,
like
I get high quality crap.
Yeah. Well, that too. Unfortunately,
I don't know about your
Instagram
low quality stuff. Mine is very expensive and high quality.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to ask, though, is why is this stuff happening on Facebook when it's not really happening on Instagram? Because that to me would indicate an ability to stop it at some level and a decision not to on some level on Facebook. And
different people
because
on each one too, different audiences.
Much different. Yeah. Well, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's that the demographic on Instagram is less inclined to click on these ads. So the, people paying to promote stuff just don't
More
target
allergic to
people.
bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so maybe criminals don't find it economically incentivizing to be on Instagram. But yeah, I mean, if you have a Facebook account, you've seen them and they show examples of some of these ads here, everything from the government's giving out money to Americans. Click here to make sure you get yours. To, like I've seen cryptocurrency ones. There's one here that's like it's a spice box, like McCormick seasonings. I don't know why you would do this, but yeah. So I mean, they estimate that it's 10%, and we were talking before we started recording about like the staggering volume that this is. Like 15.
Do you want to know how much 10% of their 2024 revenue was?
Yeah.
It was $16.5 billion.
Yeah.
Like that might make it the biggest scam ever. The most
$2
profitable
per
scam
human.
ever.
Yeah.
I mean, how much was
sorry.
the Bernanke thing? Was that bigger? The pyramid scheme? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, but I mean,
big.
It's 8 billion people on Earth, and that's like $2 per person in the world. That's insane amounts of money. And so, and I think the more important question that we were talking about before is that how is this happening? How are they not being held accountable? And aside from moral impunity and a general lack of willingness to hold anybody accountable for anything at the federal level right now, it's also like it's a numbers game. It's okay, our attorneys estimated that it's going to cost us this much money if we get sued for this, but we can drag the lawsuit out for this many years and then settle it for not friggin' $16.5 billion. I'll tell you that. What their fines are usually like a couple $100 million, and everybody's like, oh, and they're like, make it rain.
It's just an accounting footnote. Like there's no question of morality or ethics or anything like that. It's just how much is doing the wrong thing going to cost us today?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, and
that little? Let's keep on doing the wrong thing.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, I don't know. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole where somebody's going to label me as a communist. And but that's the issue with capitalism, right? Is that anything that is a private enterprise that is for profit is incentivized to do the wrong things for profit.
Yeah.
And generally the people being harmed by those wrong things are not the people who benefit from the profits, because underrepresented people don't participate in the stock market or the financial system the way that wealthy people do. So
the quantity of harm is different, right? Like it's still hurting people who are really rich, but people who are really rich can absorb a lot of downturn, whereas Robin Hood day traders cannot.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if you think about the kind of people that these things exploit, it's vulnerable people. It's less educated. You're not clicking on the government's giving away $15 to everybody in the US ad because you're busy studying for your master's degree and needed a brain break, right? Like, I guess the point is we have a lot of now elderly people on social media. Facebook, actually, I don't know if you remember, they went through that period where they made mobile phones because they were trying to get better access to third world markets. And so they
weren't making them. They were like, paying to have a Facebook button or
they partnered with a phone manufacturer to have Facebook like pre-installed on millions of phones that they sold in third world countries to try to get better coverage in those places. And they have really, really broad usage in places around the globe where you wouldn't think that they do. And so
I've got the number here. The same place that had the revenue, I assume it's like it's a filing. It's formatted like a filing. But their daily active people was 3.35 billion on average for December 2024. So 3.35 billion. That's like half of everybody, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
and I don't know what percentage of people even have access to technology to get on the internet. So it's probably an even bigger percentage of whatever that number is.
Yeah. So let me. Oh God, now I'm letting it. Sorry,
Numbers
I was
nerds
really.
here.
I had to accept cookies really fast so I could get to data I wanted to get to. But yeah, I mean, if you
That's
look
annoying.
at the countries around the world that have that where Facebook is used, like there are no countries that are not represented. And it's gosh, there's a couple I'm trying to find. I found a really good like heat map by country that I can't find right now. But
Do you ever watch Subway Takes? Are you familiar with
no,
Subway Takes?
no.
So it's a series of videos. This guy in New York basically gets on the New York subway and has guests sit on the subway with him, and they hold up the Metro cards. They have like little microphones taped to them, so they're talking into the Metro cards. And he just says, "What's your take?" And this person has a take, and it's usually like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 6 minutes for some of the longer ones. And there'll be famous people that you know, or comedians you've never heard of, random people sometimes. And the other day, one of them was like, "We need to redo the internet. Just EMP, just pull the plug." Like, I'm not saying we don't need internet. I'm saying we built it. This guy's take was that we built it wrong, and we just need to start over and rebuild it different because the way we built it sucks.
Yeah.
And reading stories like this, it's hard to disagree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I think kind of reading Cory Doctorow's latest musings, as well as Jeff, what is it, Wiles? So what's his last name from Wikipedia?
Coding of horror, something like that.
No, yeah, just in general,
Horrors?
they both have books out, so they've both been doing kind of media tours and interviews around them, and talking about I don't know if we built the internet wrong as much as the way we allowed people to monetize it
Yeah.
is problematic. And
Yeah.
we've talked about this before where I was like, why is it legal to sell every single thing about me but the skin that's attached to that data?
Yeah.
Like if you sell me to somebody, that's human trafficking, but you can sell even my genetic markers to somebody and it's not. And yeah, and this whole kind of the concept of advertising and things like that, we chose to use a media model to monetize the internet, and it was just a very that's not it
Sa-
should have been looked at as a utility,
Yeah.
but it would
Sales and
probably be
marketing
crappier.
is the number one thing that people hate to interact with, right? Like nobody likes a used car salesman. Nobody likes the ad breaks, interrupting their TV shows or their sports programming. But that's just how media and it turned into the internet. That's how the whole thing is paid for and monetized. Is this thing that just has this propensity, this likelihood of just going really toxic and malicious places, right? For it is a best practice now to put ad blockers on corporate endpoints because so much malware is delivered through them.
Yeah.
Google is a great way for people to spread malware. A lot of info stealers get spread through Google, like official AdWords paid for by the cybercriminals. That's how they get your passwords, and that's how they get into the enterprise. And
Yeah.
it's
Or like who decided that they so desperately needed notifications from Chrome that the benefit of allowing those is overwhelmingly trumps the fact that they are almost always malicious. Like, what do you need? Like maybe calendar programs? I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess people use Chrome-based things, but it's one of those things where you're like, how is it that you do this equation and you see the harm being done? And because you're a private company, like you just get to make that choice, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is telling that it is a security best practice to disable the thing that pays for the internet, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think the question then becomes like, so 10%, right? So if there are no consequences for this, is that implicitly where we're setting
or
the
not
bar?
enough consequences?
Yeah, not enough. Or, like, is that implicitly where, okay, well, now every other company that has ad revenue says, okay, now we know that the tolerance is set at we can at least allow 10% of scams to get through, because that sets a bar, right? And it's not like any other company in the world is going to be racing. I don't know. I think that was like, it sucks that you have to pay for privacy. And
Yeah.
the only way to counter this is probably going to be, and people have tried it, it hasn't worked, some type of paid social media network where, you vet people on the way in, and then it just creates a gatekeeping for social media that defeats the purpose of social media.
Well, and we're already there. We've already seen that. There are Slacks, there are Discords where you have to be vetted before you can get in. There are replacements for Discord and Slack that are decentralized. The Mastodon is heavily desensitized. Some Mastodon vet people before they're allowed in. The decentralized nature of it makes it a pain to use sometimes, because you click a link and you can't reply to something because that link is on a Mastodon server that you're not logged into, right?
Yeah.
And it removes some of the convenience, but for a lot of people, it's worth it to not have to deal with the deluge of crap. And we've only seen it get worse, right? Like we've seen the major social media companies, Elon, when he bought Twitter, got rid of all the people that police the stuff and pulled it out of our feeds. Almost immediately after that happened, the main reason I stopped using Twitter is I was getting reply spam, like dozens of crypto reply spam a day, and it was just taking me so much time to report each one, mute it, delete it, block it. Like, I don't need to spend 10 minutes of my day cleaning up the trash that the social media company should be cleaning out for me, right? So I just stopped using it. And I think everybody reaches that point where they're like, you know what, this is just an unusable mess. I'm moving on. So I think it eventually maybe self-corrects. Once everybody feels the enshittification, to use Cory Doctorow's famous term that he coined, we can only hope it self-corrects. And speaking of self-corrects and making billions of dollars off of shady things, apparently the markets took a hit when Michael Burry, who's famous for his fictionalized character in The Big Short, has a bet against AI stocks. So I don't know if this is his first big short against something since the housing crisis, but people noticed. It's a $1.1 billion short against AI stocks.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty open that I'm fairly short the market right now, and like I'm very long-term short, and then short-term kind of try to keep little, long positions that I can sell whenever the market irrationally pops over something. But I think the chances of finding $3 trillion worth of value in these companies in the next couple years are pretty slim. And I hope I'm wrong and everybody gets rich and then remembers me and donates to my retirement fund because I was missed by all of the AI boom. But yeah, I don't see how it doesn't correct. I don't see how, and mostly because that's just the nature of innovation. Because right now we're throwing it at every single thing. You're going to see a few things really stick. Yeah. You're going to see a few businesses create viable pricing models and business models out of those. And we're going to have to go through a pretty nasty contraction to have that happen. And, I actually, interestingly, I was listening to a podcast about robotics and Amazon kind of getting to a certain milestone with robotics where they really will be able to start replacing a lot of workers or not hiring a lot of workers. And I actually think that's more of a concern than anything. But like, I think robotics are going to displace more people than AI is. And maybe we need the AI to power the robotics. And that's where one of the outsized areas of growth is. But Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody explain to me how we're going to accomplish all of this absent some breakthrough in compute. And even if there is a breakthrough in compute, we just installed all of these freaking things. So you're going to go through and have to that's the part that I don't understand is like, if you can only use something for 18 months,
Mhm.
how that's all going to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that kind of frustrates me with the speed of innovation is that there's no time to polish or make things efficient, right? Like we've got all these apps now that are based on Electron and use a gig of RAM. When if you went back and built it in C++ or Delphi or something like that, it would use like 3 megs of RAM with the same functionality, right? But
Mhm.
because it's built on a web browser platform, it's incredibly inefficient. And but Slack, Discord, like all these apps, Teams run off of Electron, and we accept it because we've got enough disk space for like Teams shouldn't be taking up a gig on my hard drive, right? That
Yeah.
is completely unnecessary. Each of these shouldn't be taking up a gig on my hard drive, but because my hard drive is 2 terabytes, who cares, right?
Yeah.
So like, at what point do we start making this stuff more efficient? If we keep getting the compute bumps, we don't have to. We can just keep burning cycles all day long. And that's just the speed of the innovation. And I think robotics is interesting because it's been steadily innovating slowly for 50 plus years, right?
Mhm.
So I'm really interested at what some of these markets look like that innovate slowly versus innovate quickly. Like ideally, I guess you want to fail fast, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. And
unless it
I
crashes
think,
the global economy.
well, and that's kind of there are several realities coming together at the same time, right? There's the automation, and this is just kind of a second industrial revolution, right?
Mhm.
It's a robotics revolution, and I think that there's that happening. There's also this kind of like scarcity of resources and things changing and a widening wealth gap. And um, one of the things that I think is the most bubbly about AI, and I've said this before, is that we stopped investing in skilled labor years ago,
Mhm.
years and years ago.
Yeah.
And labor unions became very big and very inefficient. And as the kind of demographics of the different political parties started to shift, um, they kind of both left labor unions. Like people who were still in labor unions were very cynical about the unions they were in. And I only mention unions because that primarily had been the source of skilled labor, of mechanics, of
Mhm.
mechanical engineers, of like the people who actually do the work on the physical components of AI. And we don't have those people. And we are not investing in STEM right now. We've been very
It now
weirdly
applies.
anti-STEM.
Your
Yeah.
example applies to programmers now. Like that.
Yeah.
That's the next level of losing skilled labor is with AI writing the code. We're going to have a bit of a brain drain there. People already. Like I remember when I first came into my first career job in 2001, I observed that the developers we worked with, um, our code was even though they were writing C++ and stuff like that, they weren't using things like Electron. Like it was already really inefficient. They weren't closing objects. There was all kinds of memory leaks in the code, and I found the developers back in 2001 didn't understand how memory worked, didn't understand how
Mhm.
CPUs and cache and buses worked. So they were completely unable to appreciate the inefficiency of the code that they're running, that those of us like building the systems for them to run it on. This was before I got into security. When I was on the IT side, it was very difficult to have that conversation with them because they didn't understand the RAM is finite on the system. Like, look,
Yeah.
you got to close your objects. And I ended up doing stupid shit like scheduling a task at 1 a.m. to restart the WebSphere instance because that was the only way to solve the memory leaks because I couldn't get them to fix them. We couldn't even locate them because there was not enough memory on any machine to attach in debug mode to find where the memory leak was. And this is
Yeah.
JTEE stuff, Java stuff. Um, and it was really frustrating. So we just ended up letting everything be inefficient and finding a workaround. And I feel like we're still doing that today.
Yeah, well, and I think there's like, if you look at many, many, many other things in our society that we could automate and that for private businesses would be beneficial to automate, and they have not yet, I think a lot of them, it's for that reason. It's that
Yeah.
there's so many layers upon layers of things that you have to
Understand?
rely on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think about things like there are some like the airport trams that only
Mhm.
have to go a very short distance on a fixed track, do the same thing over and over again. Those are automated. We
Mhm.
still have conductors driving all of our diesel rail freight, and there's a reason for that,
Yeah.
which is that they operate in unpredictable
Yeah.
environments
It's
where
not
the
a
real
closed loop,
world
right?
happens.
Yeah. It's not a
Yeah.
controlled environment. Yeah.
Right. And when it takes you half a mile to stop under the best of circumstances, you probably want a human to make that call. Yeah.
But
And so
then
I just,
you have to pay for their therapy because things happen
yeah.
because you have a human in that position.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I think to your point, like it's really interesting to think about like how this resets or how we find defined use cases where there's enough knowledge retention to maintain the foundations of a lot of this technology.
Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots. Just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1Password. All right, where do we go? Where do we go from that that rosy picture that we've painted so far?
Let's
So
see.
I'm going to jump somewhere completely different because I want to make sure we get to this. Because I made a prediction earlier. I don't know, Jackie. Do you remember the prediction I made on AI SOC stuff? AI SOC
No.
startups.
Oh yeah. We were going to see the first couple raising money.
So my prediction was, and I'll have to go back and like pull a clip out to prove that I did make this prediction because I never got to writing the blog post, was that I don't think it's going to be a thing unless if it's, let me turn that around. If it's a thing, if it works, throwing LLMs at SOCs, to improve alert fatigue or reduce alert fatigue and to help automate even entire tiers of SOCs. And different companies are doing different things. Some of them are saying, look, this is just an assistant. This isn't replacing anybody. Others are saying, yeah, we're automating entire tiers of the SOC. And my prediction was, if we don't see any of those companies getting acquired before the end of the year, it's not a thing, right?
Oh
Because
yeah, yeah.
there are so many NDRs and MSSPs with very tight profit margins, where if they could replace some humans with this stuff in a way that makes financial sense and still meets SLAs, they'd be the first to do it because that's going to improve their margins immediately, overnight. And we
Yeah.
haven't seen that happen. But what we did see happen is there was the only company I know of out there, and we had Tim Malcolmvetter on the show talking about his company WireSpeed. It's the only one I know about that's fully automating stuff in the SOC using zero AI, using just traditional techniques. So the benefit there is it's extremely cheap and it's extremely fast because LLMs are expensive and slow. So they just got
And I
acquired
think
by.
that's the reason you haven't seen people acquiring those companies, is that they start using them and they're like, holy hell, our cloud bills just exploded.
Yep.
And we can't, and you have to go through a whole period where you do both, right? Where you have humans and AI, and you have to you have to know you're going to recoup enough costs to run those parallel processes for a very long time, which is very expensive.
Well, and it's hard to compare it to apples to apples, because when you're using humans, you're accepting that there's a certain percentage of the alerts you're not getting to,
Mhm.
or you optimize your alerts so that your humans can get to all of them. But again, like I was talking about, with excess capacity, you can afford to be inefficient. I think the idea with some of these is we can get to 100% of the alerts if we have AI just doing all the triage, all this additional work here. But then the question comes, like, tackling 100% of the alerts, what does that cost? Right.
Yeah.
And if it's not going to tackle 100% of the alerts, if we're going to limit it because of our budget, then what are we gaining over humans? Because I'm not even sure if LLMs doing these tasks are faster than humans. Because the times I'm seeing quoted by these companies, like 5 to 13 minutes to enrich an alert, I'm not sure that's faster than humans, and I'm not sure it's cheaper either at the rates that I'm seeing, and the rates that I hear about stock analysts getting paid, like less than 50 grand, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's also, we're not even paying, we're talking about paying the cost of running these agents. We're not even talking about the cost of putting all the proper layers of security and all of the identity and all of that on top of them that you're going to end up also paying for, because a lot of these don't have a lot of those features baked in yet because they don't exist.
Mhm. So so WireSpeed got acquired by Coalition, which I think is an insurtech, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
Coalition is like they almost do like a cyber warranty. It's like managed
mhm.
insurance and response.
Yeah, so it makes sense that they would, and we've seen a lot of cyber insurance either partner or create their own MDR, right? Like um, at Bay is another one.
Hmm.
I think we even have a story from at Bay here, have their own MDR service. So it makes sense for them to have, if they're going to have to pay out on incidents and breaches, it makes sense for them to want to offer a service that reduces the amount that they have to pay out on those things, right? So very interesting to see where the insurance companies go with their investments.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's always been kind of my question, is like, how do you institute enough transparency that you can ensure that if I have to pay for everything I find, I still am incentivized to find everything?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think it's notable that the only company in this space, in the automating the SOC space, that was acquired is the one that was noisily not using AI.
Yeah, okay, good old fashioned automation.
I don't think that was a coincidence. Time may make a liar of me, may prove me wrong, but we'll see. There's still almost 2 months left in the year. Maybe one of the other ones gets picked up as well. But I would have thought if it was going to happen, it would have happened before now. And my prediction is that those companies end up pivoting into something else. I don't think they just all close up shop, give back the rest of their funding.
Yeah, I hope not.
All right. So there's an interesting article here. The AI security absorption has begun, from Mike Prevet. And it's really interesting because he's saying AI security investment is a very, very tiny percent of the overall funding right now. So I'll just read this tagline from it. Everyone says AI security is transforming cybersecurity, but if it's really a revolution, why is it only 9% of deals and 3% of funding?
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Jackie?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a risk reward thing, and I think it's become pretty clear that the first and most obvious use case for AI for the vast majority of people is entertainment. And as much as we want to think that we can automate really meaningful things with AI and we can cure cancer and we can do all of these crazy things, like the reality is that we are investing in a lot of things that at the end of the day are entertainment. And yeah, and so I think that security is kind of, if I were an investor right now, it would be pretty hard because I think security as an industry is just kind of trying to absorb what AI means for them, and both from a how it's going to automate some jobs in security, but also now everything's a security problem. And so how that fundamentally changes the requirements in security, what people are going to want from their security tools, what skills people who are coming into security are going to need beyond what we have now. And so um, I think it would be pretty hard to show me a viable 3-year business plan right now because the world changes every 6 months. And so that path to revenue as a security company is going to be like, it's not a 6-month path to revenue as a security company. There's a lot of R&D that goes into that. So yeah, I don't know. I think investors are looking to ride the bubble right now, and security is not generally where bubble valuations happen. That's very, very uncommon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because security has to cover everything, right? So you rarely see everything all in one bucket. And kind of Mike's point here is AI is just a new technology, right? Like there's such thing as AI security. It's just security. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as an AI security product. It's just a product that maybe has some better technology behind it, right? It'd be like calling something a big data security product, right? Like it's just the same security product, just the database is now more efficient, right? or can handle larger loads.
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, it's all just using calculus to automate things and make
Mhm.
decisions, right? And so it's, as much as we want to anthropomorphize it and make it this
Yeah.
breakthrough
Thinking.
in,
It's thinking,
yeah,
Jackie.
yeah, it's not. It's doing calculus, in a really weird graph and sometimes not getting it right.
Yeah.
Like it's
Even
like
though
when,
it spent 39 seconds thinking.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Um, let's move on to cargo theft, Jackie. This one is fascinating. Oh no, the guys are coming back. They're back. They're outside. I can see them through the window. They want to install a smoke detector. They're knocking on the door. Tom, we're gonna have to pause again. It'd be funny if
My
we left
dog's
that in
not.
though.
My puppy is pissed off that he's in his crate and is going to start screaming anyway.
Ah, you got some stuff. I got 10 more minutes to go, but if it's not too noisy or if you can start upstairs, I think it'll be fine. Yeah, that works. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I just asked him to start upstairs since we've just got 11 minutes left. All right, let's go. I'll just rewind one sentence there and hand off to you,
Yeah.
Jackie.
Yeah.
All right, Jackie, let's jump to using cyber to steal cargo. I thought this was really interesting. This is something I hadn't even been thinking about and didn't realize was going on. So what's going on here?
Yeah, you had shared this article, and when I originally read the headline, I had thought about a different issue that I'd been tracking for quite some time. And so this article is all about basically hijacking cargo ships to steal the actual cargo that's on those ships.
Mhm.
Um, and that's crazy.
So we've got two articles here. One is I was looking at the proof point one.
Oh, okay.
Remote access real cargo, cyber criminals targeting trucking and logistics. But we
Yeah,
also have another one that's focused on using GPS spoofing, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, in this, so the one that you shared, you had shared this one about the remote access one, and
Mhm.
so essentially they're compromising trucking and freight companies to steal cargo freight, and it was saying that it's like a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise, and I guess that's not. Is that a lot though? I don't know. How much is a truck full of crap usually worth?
I
I guess it
mean,
depends on the crap in the truck.
more than robbing a a convenience store for sure.
Yeah. So basically, they
Or even most banks, right? The amount of cash that they have on hand. Well, I mean, it's difficult. There's a reason that threat actors don't go after credit card numbers anymore, because you got to fence those things, right? Like you got to hire some mules, and they go to an ATM, and the limit they can take out per day is $600 in cash, and you're going to pay the mule some percentage of that cash, or you stole a bunch of iPhones. Well, how do you get rid of those iPhones now? How do you sell them? Like it's this long, like 19-step process. There's a reason cyber criminals move to ransomware, because it's do a pen test, encrypt a bunch of servers, steal a bunch of data, and send the
yeah.
ransom note, and you're done. And you're talking 6-7 digits instead of having to move $1,000 iPhone at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is interesting because they're not like hijacking the GPS in the truck and just having the truck drive to some shady warehouse where they're
Mhm.
unloading this cargo. That's not how this happens. So basically when if you ship stuff, you usually go through what's called a freight broker. So the way it works, if you haven't had to do shipping, is that most people who drive tractor trailers are independent brokers
Mhm.
or independent drivers and operators, and they own their trucks. And then you have these brokers that sit in the middle, and they essentially you either have less than a truckload, so you have, oh, I have 8 pallets, so that's like a quarter of a truckload, and they pair you up with someone or ones else to fill the rest of that truck. And then drivers actually bid on the load. So they'll say, "Oh, okay,
Mm.
going from Albuquerque to San Bernardino, full truckload. I'll do it for this much, right?" And so this is what they're doing. They're basically compromising accounts for those brokers. They put in a fake load. So they basically put in a fake truckload for people to bid on.
Mhm.
Then when people bid on that truckload, they send them a malicious link. So then they have access to the truck driver who would be bidding on a load's link. They then use that to, as that truck driver, bid on a load, and then they can steal that load. So then because sometimes you have to tell people what's in these loads of goods. So you can, in a very targeted way, looking through these, manifests. Because, for example, if it's got, to your point, iPhones and there's lithium ion batteries, you have to disclose that so that the truck driver knows what they're hauling.
Right.
Um,
They have to
yeah.
put
And
the
so,
special sign on the truck, right? There's all
yeah,
these.
exactly.
So, Jackie, what little I know about GPS, I did some research a couple years ago, is that it's not a precision attack tool, right? Like when you're spoofing or jamming GPS, or jamming communications in general, you're doing it for everybody all at once, including yourself.
Yeah.
If you're dependent on GPS. So I imagine this is not something you can use to precision target a boat and steal cargo or something like that. So what is what is Russia's goal here with this?
Yeah, I think this is more about disruption than misdirection. So it's more, we're kind of postulating about this that if I'm, for example, Russia got their ass kicked by some drones that may or may not have been coordinated by GPS. So,
Right.
I mean, let's say
Ah, I
that
see. Yeah.
somehow I know that there's a fleet of 300 drones headed towards Moscow. And to your point, you can't, because it's coming from the satellites down, it's kind of like, you have to open an umbrella in the shower. It's going to open it for everybody. So you're taking out
Yeah.
your own GPS if you
Good
do it.
metaphor. I like that metaphor.
Yeah. And so, like, I think this is not something where you would do it just to mess with people. This is something where it's probably either a last case resort, or you've developed some type of non-GPS based location technology where you don't think
Right.
you would need it, but your enemy might.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. All right. I think we have time for maybe one or two other stories, and then the squirrel story here. I do want to mention there was a bit, so I labeled it dumpster fire, a bit of a kerfuffle with MIT Sloan, which I think is the business school of MIT, who apparently did a deal with Safe Security. I don't know if money changed hands, but they put out a paper. Kevin Beaumont and Marcus Hutchins also took a quick read of the paper, and basically the paper was saying like 80% of all cyber attacks now leverage AI. And these guys were like, no. And the paper was saying CISA says this and that, and CISA never said those things. So again, like we talked about in our topic segment, you disprove one thing in there, forget the rest, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it just begs the question of how these things get through however many layers of review are supposed to happen and get published. And nobody, like I said, there are all these telltale hallmarks of stuff. And like, even on its face, how can you look at that and not be like, that doesn't sound right?
Right.
80%? Is that by volume?
They retracted the paper shortly after Kevin Beaumont kind of, went on this tirade online. It disappeared from the website, from MIT's website. There still are other sites linking to it, even though it's gone. And it was a 404, but now it goes to a page that reads that they are updating the paper. They're making corrections, and they're gonna come back real soon, right? They're gonna replace it with something. So be interesting to see what they replace it with. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit our squirrel story here and wrap up. I thought this was hilarious. Apparently, your IQ comes from your mom. So the title of the story is "Sorry, Dad. Science says intelligence comes from mom." I thought this was funny. I for a long time I believed that my ADHD comes from my dad. He will deny that he has ADHD, but once I was diagnosed with it, I was like, oh, like that explains so much about my dad.
Yeah.
But apparently it says intelligence IQ comes from mom.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think my autism comes from my dad. Like if I think about my dad, he used to get very like overstimulated, and like it was very hard to be a parent for him. And I think once I became a parent, I was like, oh, like I have enough self-control to not explode in anger right now, but I can kind of see why he used to, because this is very overstimulating. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's different types of intelligence. So I think if this is talking about cognitive reasoning and STEM, there's different types of intelligence. And I think I got some from each of my parents, because I definitely got my musical ability from my dad.
Yeah. So. Interesting. Yeah. Same with me. Like I can see bits of me in both my parents.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining me today, Jackie. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And for the record, I have 3 genius children, so you're welcome, kids.
Nice. A big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Next week, we'll be talking to Rob Allen from ThreatLocker, and we'll see you then.